Welcome, adventurers, to the Recall to Adventure podcast, where we're celebrating 25 years of Islands of Adventure. We are your hosts, Holly
And Maya.
So for our final episode, we wanted to do something that was making sure that we heard other stories from other people about their time experiencing Islands of Adventure. We already got to talk about our experiences and some of our favorite memories in episode 1, but we wanted to make sure that various different content creators were included in that discussion as well.
All right, so based off that, you can understand that we have a couple of special guests for this episode. We have our round table around the Iowa Lagoon, if you will. So if you guys want to start by introing who you are and what your content style is.
I'm Alicia Stella, and I run the theme park channel Theme Park Stop and the website Orlando Park Stop, and I talk about theme parks. I've been talking about theme parks online since about 2014, starting with Skull Island Reign of Kong. So Islands of Adventure. I mean, Islands of Adventure has always been my favorite park since they opened it, but seeing that park get new stuff like the Harry Potter area is kind of what inspired me to talk about theme parks getting new experiences. And that's become my full-time career, is exploring and learning and digging into permits to see how and what theme parks are getting what new rides. I've been doing it for 10 years now. Yeah, I like talking on the YouTube channel, podcasting, blogging, whatever it is. If anyone will listen, I will talk about what is on the horizon for new theme park attractions around the world.
Name's Jaalin Harvey. I do a podcast and I'm just a guy who talks about theme parks on Twitter. Like I don't know how I'm an authority on any of these things, but I just showed up on podcasts and made a few of them myself. And yeah, that's kind of how I'm roped into this theme park world. I've been in the theme park space my entire life, growing up here in Florida, especially Tampa, Florida, with Busch Gardens being in my backyard. Hell, I think I'm like 15 minutes away from it. But I also grew up going to Universal and Disney, more so Universal than Disney, given the fact that after 9/11, Universal was hurting to get anybody into IOA or just to get people to the resort in general. So it was just always dead, and there was always tickets like deals. So we went to Islands of Adventure and Universal, and more so Islands of Adventure during like the first chunk of my life. I want to say maybe by the time Harry Potter opened. Only time I went to Universal Studios Florida was 2007, and like one time in 2004. Oh, and it might be the first theme park I ever went to, because there's pictures of me as a baby at Nickelodeon Studios in front of this Rugrats cutout. So yeah, that was, needless to say, I went to Universal way more than Disney. I have a big soft spot for IOA, and it's one of the first memories I remember at a theme park is at IOA.
Coaster Studios is a theme park and YouTube channel based here in Orlando, Florida. We travel around the world riding the craziest rides and attractions that we can find. So I've experienced over 1,000 roller coasters. I know Sarah here has experienced.
I don't know how many. I don't keep track, but I know it's a big number.
But yeah, we just do like videos about like our experiences at the parks in the form of vlogs. There's reviews, like discussions. We do games even. It's a little bit of everything. We kind of consider Coaster as a bit of a variety channel.
So my name is Matt. I run a YouTube series called Storybook Amusement, which celebrates obscure and defunct theme park attractions. Pretty much, I'm like everyone else. I'm nothing more than just a big theme park enthusiast. I love roller coasters, dark rides, and just theme parks in general. So I just love sharing that with other enthusiasts who have that same passion.
Awesome. Thank you all. So for our first question, how were you introduced to Islands of Adventure?
The first time I went to Islands of Adventure would have been like way back in the day with my family. I don't remember it super duper well, but I'm pretty sure a good amount of the attractions that were at like the Universal Resort period are not there anymore. Have been like replaced by other things. The first time that I remember going like as an adult was I went for spring break when I was living in Miami. And that was when I got to see like the Wizarding World for the first time. And like Dragon Challenge was still there. And I just remember it being just the most incredible experience because I had done Disney primarily like during my like youth, other than a trip here and there to other places. So like it felt like this whole new ball game being there because everything is so different. Like they tackle different like ride ideas very differently than Disney, and I just like totally fell in love with it. And it's only gotten better ever since then, really.
My first visit to Islands of Adventure was a bit of a unique one. So, as a kid, I was afraid of roller coasters, but I was fascinated by them. And so I had this little book that had, pictures of some of the craziest rides out there. And here I am in elementary school looking at a photo of dueling dragons, thinking, this looks like the coolest thing ever. I don't think I would ever ride it, but it looks awesome. And so when I was in seventh grade, our family didn't have a whole lot of money. This was like shortly after the recession. My dad was struggling with finding a good job. And so I had some cousins that surprised our family with a trip to Orlando. And this was like right after Christmas. So, definitely not the best time to go to a theme park, but we didn't know that at the time. We were just excited. I'd never been to Florida before. And they said, you can pick 2 parks in Orlando to visit. And so I said, I don't care what the other one is. I want to go ride Dueling Dragons and visit the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. And to my surprise, they're in the same park. And that was Islands of Adventure. It was really cool for me to visit this place that I at the time, I didn't even know the difference between like Universal or Disney. I knew nothing, but I was just so excited to experience this world in the movies of Harry, Ron, Hermione, this universe that I cared so much about. And I also really liked Jurassic Park and Marvel and everything. And I rode Dueling Dragons. That was a really cool moment for me. And then I got on The Incredible Hulk, which was what I credit as the ride that got me into roller coasters. Like Dueling Dragons first captured my interest, but when I rode The Incredible Hulk, I was like, whoa, that was insane. I want to do a lot more attractions like that. And so that's kind of what sent me over. And so I have a huge sentimental attachment to Islands of Adventure.
Well, the first experience of the park didn't really start off with actually going to the park. Every year, my grandparents, they bought a timeshare like years ago. And when my mom got older, she ended up being able to get one for herself. And she brought along her nieces and nephews and her goddaughter. And eventually she had me. And so I was brought along as well. So my mom pretty much was rolling with like 6 to 8 kids. Then she married my dad, who had about 4 kids on his own, including 3 girls who came through as well. And one thing that we would do all the time we would go down to the lobby or like the Cracker Barrel or whatever like restaurant where they would have all of those like brochures with the different attractions that you could go to around the resort. We would always take the Disney ones and we would always take the Universal ones, especially the Disney ones, because we were all too broke to go. And we would also watch religiously watch the trailers that would be on TV. There would always be one resort like channel that would constantly be looping Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure and Disney, like the Must Do with Stacey J and the different like highlights of the attraction with the Universal voice guy. I don't even know if I can find it to this day, but it was just that. And that was my first exposure. And later on, I want to say around 4 or 5. So that would be around 2000, 2001 is when we took our first trip. And there's tons of pictures of it. There's pictures of me in Toon Lagoon. There's pictures of me if I ran the zoo. It's amazing. And I remember going and really falling in love with Toon Lagoon instantly. I'm a big cartoon guy, but my grandfather is also a big cartoon guy, and he would read the newspaper comics to me, and we would also share cartoons because I would be up early in the morning to go to school, and he would be up early in the morning to go to work. And early in the morning, they would have like Rocky and Bullwinkle and older cartoons on Cartoon Network. So we kind of like would watch them together just while we would get ready and things like that. So I was already pre-equipped to know every last one of those characters when I walked into the park. And one particular memory that we had is my dad said every kid would be able to pick one ride that we can go on. And I don't know why, a little baby me, because I was like, I'm a big guy now, but I was just a stick back in the day, like the runt of the litter, the smallest of all of the kids. And I saw Ripsaw Falls and said, that's what I want. That's my pick. That's what I want to go ride.
I actually got to experience Islands of Adventure through the team member previews. I hadn't actually, because I did work at Universal Orlando, but it wouldn't be until a couple of years later. I had a friend from high school who was working at Universal at the Hitchcock experience. and they all got to do a preview for Islands of Adventure and got to invite a friend. And they invited me because they know that I've always loved theme parks. So being able to walk around Islands of Adventure before the general public, like I love this park, but being able to experience it first. It's also the first time I ever rode a real roller coaster. Like I had done Big Thunder Mountain. I think that was the scariest roller coaster I've ever done in my childhood. So here I am, I think 16 years old, and I'm in line for Dueling Dragons. And I turned to my friend and I'm like, I've never done a roller coaster before. And this is a really big roller coaster. And he's like, we have this experience. Like we are here before everyone else. You're going on this ride. So I'm going up the lift hill and I'm screaming. But then as soon as it drops down, it's like, oh no, I like roller coasters. So like I'll always have that memory, even though Dueling Dragons doesn't exist, that like this is what the moment I knew I actually like roller coasters. But yeah, Islands Adventure, it's like a home away from home. It's a place I go where I feel like this is where I belong, and I've kind of grown up with the park.
It's kind of hard to pinpoint, but I just grew up in the Orlando area, so I saw it being built as a kid. I knew it was coming, but eventually I did get to go to the park during park preview, so that was the first time I got to go.
So how has being a content creator impacted your experiences with Islands of Adventure?
I personally have seen the progression of Highway from 1999 until now, and throughout that time, I knew the rumors and just fake rumors and history and whatnot, stuff like that. But it wasn't until when I started making videos about the park, that's when I realized I didn't know as much as I thought I did. It made me dig a lot deeper, like sifting through old home movies and browsing newspaper articles, just that sort of thing. And through that process, just shining light on a park that I already loved, but now I adore. And just through that process, getting to be able to see the full show of Pandemonium Cartoon Circus, seeing that footage for the first time, the friendships, the collaborations, getting to make new memories, learn new details. It's just been a great process.
So I got into the community around like 12 or 13, and it mostly came through Disney from a video game called Epic Mickey that made me dive more into the creation of Disney and theme parks and learning about the layout and how things work, particularly with learning more about the theme parks that weren't Magic Kingdom. And then once I became more cognitive of themes and understood more, I started to eat it up. Like I started to eat it up like crazy. And living down here, I took band in middle school all because I knew in 7th and 8th grade, you would either go to Universal or Disney because you would play someplace either at Disney Springs or Main Street or in City Walk. You only play for like maybe 30 minutes. You throw all your stuff back in the bus and you get to enjoy the rest of the day at the park. Same thing with like, we would have our 8th grade trips where we would go to Disney and Universal. So needless to say, I was the person who had all of these like books and stuff and guidebooks, and I would just be digesting them like crazy. And later on with actually making the content, which eventually happened, was something I always wanted to do since I was a kid. It makes me have a better love and appreciation for it because of the community I found. No matter what a thing is, whether it's sports, whether it's video games, whether it's a made up location that is a theme park, with us being humans and just being like this communicative species, we're always going to have something to flock around and build a community around. I mean, making content and getting out there on social media and stuff like that has given me good friends, have given me a little sister, has given me just so much. It really does impact a lot. I wouldn't think that me just rooting around on the forums of theme park sites would lead to me having a good group of friends like here in Orlando and subsequently around the world.
I did a lot of visits there once I moved down here because I am not originally from Orlando. When I moved down here, the first thing I did was get all my annual passes. I was like broke, but I'm like, I'm going to figure out a way to get them. And I came down here a lot, like not being a content creator. And I feel like now doing what I do, I notice more than I ever did when I was like, I guess a regular guest. I've like explored more of like the like nooks and crannies and looked at things a bit more like critically, not in a good or bad way necessarily, but kind of more just like analytically, like, oh, like, what are they doing well? What could be done better? And like, I am not just saying this because we're doing a podcast about Islands of Adventure, but like, I think that is one of the best run parks in Florida, in the world. And I think doing what we do and having seen theme parks all over the world and how they operate, like I have such a huge appreciation for what the employees and the management, everyone does at that park.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Sarah just said for sure. I appreciate as a content creator sight lines, because we're going around the park with our cameras. It's like, what are the best views and the best angles that we can get of these attractions? Because we like making the parks look good. And at Islands Adventure, that's really not hard to do. And you definitely notice things that I feel like the average guest wouldn't. And a lot of that does come from visiting consistently. But, sometimes like I'll have a notepad out or, on my notes app, not an actual notepad.
I'm like picturing it like a little flip book.
This is 2024. No, I'm on my notes. I'll be like jotting down different things that I notice and things to come to mind that we can, eventually like factor into a video and bring up, because it's just things that, might not seem like a huge deal at the time, but it's, something that we find interesting that maybe that we can bring this back. And yeah, I think Islands Adventure really just sets like a gold standard that as we're visiting other parks, I'm like, wow, I really wish that they would do things that Islands did. Like the Velocicoaster locker system is like a perfect example of that. Once that was in place, you notice a lot more parks start doing the exact same thing.
I mean, whenever I'm walking around the theme parks, I'm always looking to see how things are changing. And I think I was doing that before I was a content creator anyway. So at least I have an outlet and someone like the world to talk to. The joke was that I started a podcast because my wife was tired of hearing about everything. So I toured the parks kind of like I always do. But now when I actually see something and take a picture of it, I can use it in a video or a podcast later instead of just holding it in my brain for no reason. But no, I love the way that the parks change. And it was seeing a bunch of land clearing in the Jurassic Park arch coming down for the Skull Island Reign of Kong construction that kind of started me blogging in the first place. I was going to Universal nearly every week. It was just like an outlet to relax and walk around. And I saw this demolition starting and I was like, I wonder what that's going to be. And I looked around forums and some people were like, I think it's going to be a King Kong ride. So I ended up doing a deep dive into it. And I'm like, I have to blog about this. I'm going to the park every week anyway. So ever since 2014, I've kind of been doing that and never stopped.
For our next question, we want to talk about memories. So what is your favorite memory with Islands of Adventure?
So when I was in elementary school, my family had season passes to Universal, but for the next year, we were going to get season passes for one of the other Orlando parks. And as a kid, just when I realized that the pass was about to expire, I lost it. I remember going to school one day crying because, when you're a kid, you don't really have the best concept of time. And I wasn't really sure when I'd ever get to go back, if I ever got to go back. And the main reason why I was so sad, just like in hindsight, like, yeah, I get to go to another park. I should have been happy, but at that time, I was sad because throughout my whole time going, I was too short to ride Hulk, and I never got to ride it. And that was a ride that I could draw from memory. I got jealous every time we passed by the park and you could see Hulk from the road outside. I just really wanted to do it. But a few years later, we got passes again. I was finally tall enough to ride it. And I just remember being next in line with my dad and my two older brothers, and we're in those little rows waiting to get on next. And I'm shaking uncontrollably, and it's that moment you've been waiting for. And I had all these doubts building it up so much in my head, but you get off, you finally could say you did it. I got to do it, and it's that kind of moment where I had a gateway to go do bigger and better stuff. I know we all have some sort of memory like that, but Hulk will always be special to me because of that, and I just think of that every time I'm in line for Hulk.
I would say my favorite memory would be the first day that we went and rode Velocicoaster. Like, there have been a lot of awesome ride openings, and I've had a lot of great memories at that park with a lot of people. But after watching that ride from being like conception to like when they actually started building it, and when Universal was denying that anything was happening, and it was something like positive, like during the pandemic, it was something to look forward to. Like, we're gonna get to ride this soon when everything starts to open up again. And like, that day that we went and actually sat on the train for the first time, I just feel like you and I were, I don't even know, like on some other plane of existence because we were so happy. And like, that was just such a beautiful moment. Like, it was so well worth the wait.
Yeah, that was cool. That was the first preview day. So that was like the first day anyone from the public was riding the attraction. And we had a couple of friends who like work in Universal Creative who were like, hey, this thing is like, it's really good. You're going to like it. And so we'd heard from them, and then just watching it test over and over again, like the anticipation just builds and builds and builds. And so actually sitting in that train, and then like likewise getting off the ride, and there's so many of the people that worked on the ride. I remember we talked to Greg and Shelby.
They're like, what do you think?
And Deontay.
You like it? We're like,
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So like just seeing how all their hard work paid off was really cool. And now it's just something that anyone can just like go experience. And it's that was a really, really cool day.
It's hard to pin down my favorite memory because I have so many. It's funny because some of my favorite memories of Islands of Adventure are the worst days at Islands of Adventure, but I wouldn't trade them for anything. Like, I didn't go to the opening of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter for the first day. I went for the third day. And the line for getting into Hogsmeade alone was all the way around the entire park to the back entrance to Hogsmeade. So I'm in Jurassic Park and I can see the back entrance to Hogsmeade, and I have to wait in line until we go all the way around the entire park to get back in. It took 7.5 hours, I think. Just like 2 days later, they're handing out like passes with return times in order. This is before that. I stood in line for 7.5 hours to get into that. And I barely even remember my first experience in the land. I just remember how much I hated being in line for 7.5 hours in the sun, but it was still an experience that like I wouldn't trade for anything. I have other memories of waiting for the soft open for Skull Island from opening of the park until 5 p.m. when they finally let us in, and how exciting that was to just be around other like bloggers and stuff. And like, we all knew it was going to soft open. We were like, who's going to wait the longest to actually get on this thing? And like seeing some people like, okay, I'm giving up, I'm tapping out. And it was like in the middle of summer, I think. So yeah, the worst days are my favorite memories.
One time I got to, and this was before Harry Potter opened, I remember going on Popeye for one of my seventh grade band trips, and going on Popeye, and a Universal Creative member hopped in with us and had like a checklist and was going through making sure the ride worked and everything. And while my friends were enjoying the ride, I was pestering this man with questions, and I wish I got his name, and I wish I like knew something like, so is it true that this ride is based off of Popeye the movie as well? Like, I see the octopus in there. I also see several like Sweet Haven things around. Is it true that you guys were going to actually have a dinner show? Like, I was just pestering this guy with tons of questions, and I'm 90% sure he was like, Jesus Christ, kid, I'm trying to do my job. Another one in particular I remember going to on that same trip was walking into Harry Potter to go do Dueling Dragons, since Dueling Dragons was still open while Harry Potter was being built, walking through nothing but green tarp. They were not letting you see anything that they were building. Like, you had to walk through a green tunnel to get there. And later, the year afterwards, for 8th grade, we went back. And this has to be one memory that I talk about, like I bring up all the time. I had my just then a friend, but who soon became a brother to me. It was my brother and me, and I talked him to going on a field trip that I wasn't supposed to go on. I was not doing good in my grades, and I lied. I lied to like the day of the field trip. After my parents went and told my teachers that, look, I know we can't get the money back, give it to a kid who family can afford it, yada, yada, yada. But they couldn't find a kid to fill in the gaps for me. So they still had that spot open. So the day of the field trip, I lied and said, look, my mom said it's okay, I can go on the field trip. And nobody called my mother or anything like that. Nobody. Mind you, we don't get back until like 6 or 8 o'clock at night. My mom was supposed to pick me up from the bus ramp at 2:30. Needless to say, I wasn't supposed to be on that, but I had the greatest time. And one memory in particular of that trip is my little brother squirming out about being in Harry Potter, because his family was fairly religious, and him freaking out about being in Harry Potter and all of that kind of stuff. And we all got in line to get a butterbeer, and he got a butterbeer, and one sip shut him the hell up for the rest of the damn day. For the rest of the damn day, he took one sip of a butterbeer, and we were just like, sit over here, drink the butterbeer while we go do the Harry Potter ride and enjoy what's around us, because we'll be damned. And he did not have anything else to say. Drunk the butterbeer and just sat there and shut up, because he was just like, this is sacrilegious, but damn, is it tasty. Like, that's easily my favorite memory, at least in my top 5. Like, definitely in my top 5.
Those truly sound like some fantastic memories. Now, the next question. What's your favorite island?
Oh, well, this is easy. Toon Lagoon. I'm a cartoon guy. I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of cartoons, especially those like Rebel Hole style. I honestly feel like if I could be anything, it would probably be a toon. Like I would love nothing to have like that as sort of being human or having that sort of human anatomy instead of this rigid, realistic one. Like I absolutely love cartoons, and a lot of that just came from my grandfather. Like again, going back to my grandfather and him sharing old cartoons, because we would watch cartoons together. I remember when they released Little Lulu as their own series, and we watched that together because he grew up watching the originals, which is insane because they were fairly racist. We also would watch Cat Dog together, and Rocky and Bullwinkle and Looney Tunes and Popeye. Like Cartoon Network was just such a bevy, especially in the 90s, for all of these classic cartoons. And they mostly showed in the morning when we would be getting ready for school or on the weekends early. And both me and my like grandfather, we were just early risers. And one thing in particular, I remember going to Toon Lagoon in like 2004. That was a trip back after coming when I was like 5 or 6, and I cognitively said to my mother, we need to take granddaddy here because he would absolutely love it. Like granddaddy would eat it up. And I'm pointing to all of the characters, like there's Beetle Bailey, granddaddy showed me Beetle Bailey, there's Jumpstart, the first ever like black comic strip, like they're like, oh my God, there's Family Circus. Like I'm able to recall all of these things like to my mother, and she can see me flipping out and just having an absolute like conniption over it. Like that one, and Marvel would probably be my close second because I also reacted a lot to that as a kid. I mean, Spider-Man is my favorite ride in that entire park, and it would be Popeye if Popeye didn't try to drown you. Like I just have a huge soft spot for Toon Lagoon, and a lot of that is for my grandfather. And not to get completely sappy, but in 2004 for that trip, I think it was the day after Islands of Adventure, and we were actually on our way back to town to Tampa, and my grandparents were going to come up and start their week at the timeshare. We got called to come back early because my grandfather died. He collapsed on the kitchen floor from a heart attack. And that was my like first time going like, oh damn. You know that like in Mulan when they're singing like a girl worth fighting for, and then all of a sudden it abruptly stops? That's sort of the feeling. Like I was all gung-ho and happy. I'm like, I can't wait to tell granddaddy about this. And then just abruptly, your grandfather passed. It wrecked. I know Toon Lagoon is definitely on the chopping block. If anything is the first one to go, that's the one to go. And it is a miracle that it lasted this long. But a good majority of my love for it comes from the love my grandfather instilled in animation to me, which is insane as an older black man who had to work for everything in his life, that he still could, even though he was very much an adult, he could still sit down and watch cartoons. And no other, like none of my, like both my bio and my stepdad, they have a hard time slogging through that. But my grandfather actively sought it out and watched it with me. So I kind of hold Toon Lagoon dearly. That just 1940s, 1950s cartoon wackiness, you can't find anywhere else. And I don't think we'll ever see a land ever again. Maybe with like Toontown, but Witch Hazel ain't getting, this is her only shot. Witch Hazel ain't getting no, Gas Station Alley ain't getting no more. Aesop Fables is not getting no, Peabody and Sherman failed in the theaters. This is it. This is the height that they are going to have in the theme park world, possibly forever. So to latch on to that, I'll take as much of it as I can. And hopefully, if things go the way I want it, they'll replace it with One Piece and everything, and I can still love it forever.
It's got to be port of entry. I guess it's hard to say there's nothing else out there like it, but I really do think it's the perfect thesis statement out of any theme park, at least that I've been to. You have this mishmash of fantasy and architecture, and the way it comes together, it feels like it shouldn't work, but it works on such a beautiful scale. To me, it inspires exactly what the park calls for, adventure. And just as a little kid, and now it always made me want to explore every little corner and just discover more than what you see. And to me, that's how the entire park is. It's all these stories and ideas that kind of have nothing to do with each other, like Marvel and Jurassic Park. They're just good properties that should go in a theme park, but thematically, they don't really fit together that well. But when they're in Islands of Adventure, because Port of Entry is there and it's all pulling it in, it all ties it together. I think it's such a perfect land because of that.
Port of Entry, just because the music is so good and the theming is so good, and it doesn't have to tie into an IP, but there's no attractions there. So I'm like hightailing it out of there to go somewhere else. Historically, it's always been Jurassic Park. It's kind of like my favorite movie, and they just added the Velocicoaster not that long ago, so like I actually have a reason to go back to that area. I hate the Jurassic Park River Adventure. It's not my favorite ride. It's not a good ride. It doesn't remind me of the movies. It has a broken neck yellow dinosaur, not even from the stories. I don't know, I just don't like it, but I love the area. I love walking around. I love hearing the music. I'm there for the vibes. I'm not there for the rides.
I think my favorite island is Jurassic Park. Like, I just think that land is so cool. But you do gotta also acknowledge that the Wizarding World of Harry Potter is just like unbelievable. I think that I like them both for different reasons, so it's really like tough to decide. But the one thing they have in common is that they both have an insanely awesome roller coaster that keeps me coming back to them. So that definitely helps.
I think I have to give the edge to Wizarding World because I absolutely love Forbidden Journey. I think it is such a cool ride. I always look forward to doing it. And then Hagrid's is just one of the best, if not the best, family coaster in the world. And like the thing with the Wizarding World is I feel like every time I go and like look around, I find something new. And that's with having gone and had an annual pass for several years now. So like the fact that I can go as often as I do and like still be like, I've never seen that before, I've never noticed that before, is a treasure. It's an absolute gift to be at a theme park that has that much that you know, find new things all the time. So I think I'm going to give the edge to that. And then the honorable mention is going to have to be the Seuss Landing area because it is so fun. It's like the best kids area ever.
So, getting a little bit more narrower than Island, what's your favorite ride or attraction and why?
My favorite ride is definitely The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man. I think if I really ask myself truthfully, I think it's the best ride ever made. Like there's something about it that is so perfect. And I think it comes down to the pacing and the technological advances that it made, and like taking something like 3D that at the time was always just you're in a theater and you're looking forward. And for the ride designers to be like, yeah, but what if you weren't? What if you're in a ride vehicle and you move? And then they invented this squinching and the parallax effect. And every ride for the last 25 years has been trying to rip off Spider-Man unsuccessfully. It still stands alone as the best and first of its kind. Like you can't go on Ratatouille and be like, this is better than Spider. It's not better than Spider-Man. I'm sorry, Ratatouille. You failed. I can see the outline of the floor. There's multiple ride vehicles. The squinching is completely noticeable. It just doesn't work. Spider-Man works. And then they upgraded it to like 4K, re-rendered the whole thing. It looks twice as good visually. They keep adding more effects. Spider-Man's always good.
Okay, so as oxymoronic as this is, it's Spider-Man. I know I just, went off about Toon Lagoon, but that's the one that everybody talks about. That's the marquee attraction and has been since before Harry Potter. And I still think that it can hold its own against that land. Like, I think it can hold its own. Like, Marvel is a big love of mine. So I'm going to give some love to the best raft ride domestically. I am a sucker for a raft ride. I am a sucker for a good raft ride, and it just stems from my love growing up here at Busch Gardens and loving our Congo River Rapid raft ride. And the one thing I think Universal has always been able to say over Disney since 1999 is that they have the better raft ride in all of Orlando. And it's not even like close. It's Popeye, it's Infinity Falls at SeaWorld, and then at the very bottom in the subterranean corners of hell, there is Cali River Rapids. It's not close. Popeye is one of these attractions that does justice of being a ride that absolutely soaks you. It does what a raft ride is supposed to do, in my opinion. A raft ride isn't fun if you aren't getting splashed. At that point, it's just Pirates of the Caribbean, but if it was a Circle Vision sort of like setup. It absolutely douses you. And to have tons of attractions and a great story and a great queue. Nobody talks about the Popeye extended queue, but the Popeye extended queue is one of the best queues in Orlando. It's so filled with details. It has animatronics in it, which nobody ever gives like its credit for. It has interactive gags here and there. Like, it is, by all intents and purposes, a really great experience from beginning to end, and giving Popeye his own little subland. Not even Dudley Do-Right gets that. With my, like, Me Ship Olive, all the way extended down by the lagoon, where they actually keep that as Popeye, with like the School of Fish gags and that same sort of art style. And of course, Wimpy's. Like, one thing that I absolutely love about Popeye is how when you go past Wimpy's, there's a little drive-through window. Like, it is a really cool thing there. Like, they did a great job to make a great little Popeye subland, and it's tight and it's really contained and it's well done. In the attraction, the first time I ever went up that lift hill, it blew my mind because I wasn't expecting a lift hill in a raft ride, and you're essentially going through a shootout like they have on Dudley Do-Right too, but you're getting hit from all sides. And then to keep that sort of like ocean seafaring like vibe of having the Mars and having like the gags that you fly past very quickly, with Popeye doing his wind up to Bluto, and you already know how that is going to end. It is very much well done. And it's an easy story. Even if you're not like listening to it, you can understand everything that's going on. With Cali River Rapids, it's kind of up in the air. If you're not paying attention to the queue and exactly what's going on, you won't 100% understand it. And with Infinity Falls, hell, it's SeaWorld. Be happy that it goes good the way that it goes good. But with Popeye, Popeye has such a great story that's easy to understand with its gags. And the indoor section with the cave and the giant octopus, like, it's so good. Like, it's so good. It gives you everything that you would want or think of in a Popeye attraction. It does a great job of giving you exactly what you would want from Popeye and what you would want from a raft ride. Like, it's a good Popeye ride and it's a good raft ride.
Yeah, that's so hard.
All right, I'll go. I know. Velocicoaster is definitely my favorite ride in the park. I'm such a fan of just like high thrill attractions. And when you combine an experience like that with something that is just so elaborately themed, and it's in a franchise that I really, really enjoy. Like, I loved the first Jurassic World. And so when they said, hey, we're going to do a roller coaster based around that, I'm like, oh, let's go. My first thought was they're going to do something like Flying Dinosaur at Universal Japan, which is great, but they stepped it up a notch from that. Going with Intamin for a multi-launch coaster, just bringing that technology to the United States was fantastic, because we'd previously only really seen something like that in Europe. And so I loved they were able to really take the best of both worlds. And the fact that they're also able to do that without removing an attraction is wildly impressive. So that they just like plop this ride down into an area that just completely revitalized that section and then delivers on the thrills. And it has been so cool to hear people's reactions to it, because like we knew it was going to be good, but we talked to people who didn't expect it to be what it actually is, and so they get off and they're just like floored by that experience. And we now know so many people that are like, that's my favorite roller coaster ever, and not just like coaster enthusiasts. So that's been really awesome to see.
So Velocicoaster is definitely my favorite, like, as far as, okay, it's definitely the highest if I were to rank all my favorite roller coasters as far as what's in Islands. But like, I want to like look at it as like a full package thing. And to me, like, Hagrid's is the most impressive thing at that park. Even just the queue, like how enormous it is, and that every inch of it is like themed beautifully. It is something that literally every person on the planet can enjoy. And like, I just think it's one of the most creative, wonderful attractions ever. So like, even though Velocicoaster, I'm like, oh yeah, like that's like, you know, a top 5 roller coaster in the world to me, like Hagrid's is just mind blowing. You know what I mean? So I feel like I have to give that one a good shout out.
Hagrid is my favorite ride on Universal property. I've never been a Harry Potter fan, and I'm still not a Harry Potter fan, but just looking at what that ride accomplishes, I always have so much fun on that ride. Being an outdoor coaster, it has all the tricks, all the launches. With all that it's doing, it still manages to tell a story in a really good way with a type of speed, and just create a believable world throughout that whole process. Just the design and execution from that standpoint, I have so much fun on Hagrid. But I mean, any answer in that park is the right answer. They're all good.
Now, as content creators, we love creation. So to take that idea, if you could change one thing about Iowa, what would it be?
Oh, we have the same opinion here.
Go ahead.
Toon Lagoon needs to go in replacement of Bikini Bottom.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a long time. Like, I feel like if you turn that area into Bikini Bottom, it would be like the park is already amazing and one of the best in the world, but I think that SpongeBob is so relevant and always will be because everyone loves SpongeBob. So I would agree with that. And the other thing that I would say is I would change the food offerings because I don't think that the food at Universal, like that's not necessarily just islands, but just Universal as a whole is like kind of lacking. Like if I want to eat, I always go to City Walk to like one of the third-party restaurants. So I'd love to see Universal step up their food game overall.
Yeah, I agree. But like we've just looked at the Toon Lagoon area, and SpongeBob is perfect because you are still keeping with that cartoon theme, and you're able to redo the buildings to look like the streets of Bikini Bottom. You can have the Pineapple House, Squidward's house, Patrick's Rock, and then you can also redo Dudley and Popeyes to fit within that world. And I think that you could
translate pretty easily.
Yeah, you could keep the integrity of those attractions while still like blending it. Like you could have one of them be Mrs. Puff's boating school or something, you know, or Plankton's Great Escape. I don't know. Like
Plankton's Great Escape.
Dude, the possibilities are endless. Also, there's a theater right there that needs to go because they like never use that except for like cheerleading competitions. Like, and you could put in like a small dark right there or something. It'd be so good.
That park obviously is sitting on 2 almost unused amphitheaters, and those amphitheaters deserve to be more than just the extended queue for Hagrid or the occasional cheerleading competition venue for over in Toon Lagoon. And right next door, you have what I think is one of the best theme park shows ever in Bourne Stuntacular. And then you have horror makeup shows so creative. Animal Actors is adorable. And then you have Poseidon's Fury shutting its doors, and now Islands of Adventure is just kind of left without proper indoor sit-down relaxing entertainment. I just think it would be a more complete theme park if it had entertainment like that. And we know Universal's capable of it, and the park deserves it.
I think it needs more indoor rides. I think it needs an indoor boat ride. I think we need a chill ride at Islands of Adventure. I think the Seuss trolley, the High in the Sky Seuss trolley, is a good ride because it is a more chill ride. I think we need at least one more of those. A large part of the rides at Islands of Adventure, like even Jurassic Park, ending in a giant splashdown drop. And it's like, can I just have a chill, relaxing boat ride that doesn't end with me getting soaking wet and my heart dropping, please?
The plans for Zelda suck, but that's not in yet. That's subject to change. I guess currently my only problem with, and this is a problem with a lot of the parks, no in-park transportation. Bring back the skipper boats. I didn't even get to ride it, even though I went to the park a year into its conception. I never got to do the skipper tours. But if there's one thing that I would do, it would be that it needs better in-park transportation, especially now that we have Harry Potter and that just being so constrained in a tight area and just filled with people 24/7. I think in my like 14 years of going to Hogsmeade, I think I've only seen it empty like maybe 5 times. And I go off season, I go during the week, like I go all the time, and it's still ass to ankles in there. Like it's always packed and constrained. I think we need a better way to navigate that park, and having boats that can take you at least in friendship boat style, like in Epcot, that can take you from one side to the other would just be a godsend. Like, that's just be a godsend. Not to mention, I just think something needs to be on that lagoon, and a stage, and not a stage show, but like a fireworks show, like they originally intended, would be great as well. That feels missing. Something in the lagoon feels missing. Something moving, something kinetic. The lagoon is the only thing that is missing there. Oh, and putting One Piece inside Islands of Adventure somewhere. That's it.
And for a final question, if you could say anything to those that worked on the park, what would it be?
I hope they know how beloved this park has become. Like, I really think they should be proud of the work that they've done, because this place has just inspired so many people. It's brought so many just incredibly positive memories. It's a place that people go to for escapism, and that always puts a smile on their face. And I think that they really should be proud of that.
Yeah, if I could say anything to the people that worked on that park, I think I would mainly thank them, because so many of my friendships down here in Orlando were formed around going to that park and bonding over like shared interest in the different stories there and everything. And like the drive for us to always go back with like these people that we love and like taking our family members and like people we care about in general. Like it's like, oh, you want to go to a theme park? Like we're going to take you to Islands of Adventure because we know you're going to love it. We're going to bond. We're going to have like this incredible, set of memories together. And I don't think that if you had had a different group of people that weren't so invested and so creative and didn't care as much, if it would have come out the way that it did. And it's just incredible. And I don't know, I'm never going to stop going.
Thanks. Like, I guess thanks. Like, I don't know what else to say besides thanks and for putting it in and hanging in there. I know it went through so many different phases of, DC and Looney Tunes to hang in there and put together the scraps of these lesser known cartoons and strap them together and having a park dedicated towards literature and doing different things, like going with the Jurassic and hanging in there as much as you could with trying to flesh it out, even if we didn't get everything with that. Building a land that was completely original, more or less, that didn't really have a current movie in modern day times to just build off of myths and legends. It's storytelling. Even as with, Zelda coming in and Kong pulling away slowly from the literary, going from literary to mostly literary. I don't even think that matters anymore. What Islands of Adventure means to me is storytelling. Each one of those lands have contributed to the storytelling zeitgeist in one way or another. Comic books are huge. They are part of our cultural zeitgeist, whether we like it or not. They became massive. These little nerd things became massive. The comic strips inspired so many people that later created books that I loved, like Captain Underpants and later the Boondocks of all things. Jurassic Park blew open the doors of this dinosaur explosion that we have never seen before and we're never going away from. Learning about myths and legends and bringing the first dueling coaster to Orlando and having such hope in just like knowing that these stories are so universal and that we just kind of know them, to give them a chance, and doing a walkthrough attraction on Greek myths and legends in a way that not even Journey to Atlantis at SeaWorld could do. And finally with Seuss just taking these classic childhood stories that have such poignant messages, whether it be anti-racism, being pro-environment, or learning to like enjoy a holiday not for the sake of what you get, but also because it just shows general love to people, just to be nice for one day and to also be able to have fun and do wacky stuff and go off of the cuff as long as you clean it up in the end. When you walk straight into the port of entry, I remember sending to my pops, who taught me about Kong Tiki in high school, and just like the rental where you can get the strollers at. One of the things that you can like rent on the board was a Kon-Tiki. And not many people know what a Kon-Tiki is, but it's a real true story that talks about how the Pacific Islanders were able to make it over to New Guinea and how they're actually related. And it proved that they were able to get all the way over there off of their sailboats, which was called Kon-Tiki. Like, it pulls from exploration, not just from our stories that are fictional, but also the real life stories that we have of actual adventurers. And I just can't say enough thanks, man. Like, so much of it is thanks for giving me a place where I can celebrate my grandfather while also having a bunch of new stuff. Thanks for giving me an experience where my mom was able to bring 12 kids and a husband and still be able to have a good time. Thank you for giving me a place where I could come together and meet some really great people who are lifelong friends now to me. Thanks. I know it was probably hard, and I know that you had sleepless nights, and I know it really didn't go well as much as you wanted it to, but the payoff is there. And as a kid who was raised on this part more than your competition down the road, y'all did a damn good job, and y'all showed that I'm now saying the only person who can pull stuff off like this. Y'all did the damn thing. So thank you.
Honestly, for better or worse, Islands of Adventure may have been like the jumping off point for modern theme park design, with essentially single IP lands that are completely immersive. I don't think people give the designers of Islands of Adventure enough credit. From moving from a studio park where they only theme like the front of a building and you're entering into a sound stage or you're behind the scenes of a movie and they don't have to really try, and like it's just false facades for the, you know, Hollywood backlot or whatever, to go then across the way to Islands of Adventure where you walk into the stories, you walk into a fully immersive land. It's so normal now and common that we tend to forget that was still kind of new and first of its kind. It's not a hodgepodge land of like Adventureland or Frontierland with different IPs mixed in. It is just Jurassic Park. And then when it came online, it is just the Wizarding World. And the designers from the start of that park held firm to it, like original orchestrations for all the lands, different trade dress and trademarks and designs for each of the lands to have its own identity in a way that you just didn't see back then. So I appreciate them like revolutionizing the theme park industry all in one theme park.
Islands of Adventure is really a park of its own with what it accomplished. Without Iowa, you don't get Hogsmeade. Without Hogsmeade, you don't get Pandora. Just so on, the whole domino effect. And even leading up to Epic Universe, it just goes on and on and on. And beyond Epic Universe, Islands of Adventure just has created so many positive theme park experiences just because of what it has inspired and just what it is in general. Without the creators of this park, you don't really get that. And so to the creators, just thank you for pushing the boundaries. Thank you for inspiring an entire generation of people who are creating Epic Universe and new theme park experiences. I feel like the creators who worked on Islands of Adventure did more than what was asked of them. So anyone who does that deserves a huge thank you, and especially in this case. So thank you.
And with that, that concludes all of our questions. Thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate the time that you took to give us your responses. And we had a lot of various different responses that were both sweet and funny and also bittersweet too. And not only does that conclude our roundtable discussion, that also concludes the Recalled to Adventure podcast. We really hope that you all have enjoyed spending these past couple hours listening to various stories from ourselves, from content creators, and from those that worked on the park. We also want to give a couple shout outs. In specific, we want to give a shout out to Joel Armishaw, who was our composer for this podcast. And we also want to give a big shout out to our 3 editors, Nicholas Martin, Chris Yasumura, and Mia Hendrick. Without the 3 of you, this podcast definitely wouldn't have gotten done on time. So really, thank you so much for all the hard work that you put into it.
And thus, our adventure comes to a close. But the adventure lives on, and you. Thank you for joining us as we have reflected on the past to celebrate 25 years of this amazing park. We hope you enjoyed these heartfelt stories as much as we have, and we'd like to give another humongous, giant thank you to all of those who designed the park, worked at it. If you are involved with Iowa, thank you. Thank you for creating these fantastic worlds that inspire us every day. Now go forth. The next adventure is just ahead of you.